Hello, everybody, and welcome in episode 3 of Wildly Informed. Brett Marshall alongside Isha Jerome, bringing you guys another episode of Analytics, Minnesota Wild, etc. talk today. But as I always like to start off the podcast, got to check in with the fellas. In this case, the fella, see how he's doing. Isha, how's it going tonight, my friend?
Good. Busy day, busy week, but excited that hockey's back. The regular season has started and Wild start later this week.
Yeah, I actually I've right there with you. It's been just like a crazy busy week. I have hardly even had a chance to watch other games, and I don't know that the game I watch tomorrow when the Wild play might be the first actual regular season game I have a chance to watch, unless there's some late ones tonight that I might be able to catch one of those. But yeah, it's been busy.
It's exciting. I'll be hosting a watch party on this YouTube channel for it. So if you want some different play-by-play, if you want to interact with our community here, we will be live on YouTube. So join us in the live chat for that. For the home opener, I'll be live about 10-15 minutes before puck drop, probably even maybe even half an hour before puck drop, depending on how many people are there waiting, because I know it's a really important game for a lot of reasons. And yeah, it's going to be a fun one to cover. It's going to be a heavy one to cover, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So I appreciate everyone who has already circled down their calendar and who's already liked the stream, as it's already been up, and I will get next month's streams up on the YouTube channel as well. But yeah, big week, man. Big week. And yeah, episode 3. I'm excited to get into it. What do we got on tap here for this episode?
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff today. So we're gonna kind of do like a double hitter in the analytics section. We're gonna talk scoring chances, high danger chances, and then we'll talk a little bit about something called regression to the mean. Not a super crazy concept, but then we're gonna tie that into just some stats from the Wild from last season. Talk about some areas maybe where they underachieved, overachieved, if we expect those to improve, fall back, things like that. And then in our Puck Your Opinion section, we'll have some debates about the recent announcement of who the sixth defenseman is. And then we'll talk a little bit about Marco Rossi being named, or not being named, but looking like he's going to be the number 1 center. And then obviously, I know it's been covered in some of the other shows, but we'll give a quick hitters on the Wallstedt extension. And I'll talk a little bit about what we think that 3-goalie rotation is going to look like.
All right.
Should be a good one. A lot of stuff today.
Yeah, a lot to cover, and a lot of people appreciated and liked how you ran down Fenwick and Corsi last week. So we got some good feedback on that. People were commenting on the video being like, thank you for actually explaining what that is. So to build off of it and continue to move forward this week, we will get into yet another tool.
Yeah, so we're going to talk scoring chances, high danger chances today. And essentially what these are is they're going to take kind of what we learned with Fenwick and Corsi, and we're going to kind of take that to the next level. So obviously it's good to get shot attempts. It's good, to rack up that Corsi to be putting pucks toward the net. But as we know, for those that have played hockey, that have watched it, not all shots are created equal. A Ryan Suter wrist shot from the blue line is not going to be nearly as effective as, Alexander Ovechkin from the left faceoff dot on a one-timer, right? Like they're both shot attempts. They count the same on the stat sheet, but very clearly one of those is more valuable than the other. And that's kind of where scoring chances and high danger chances kind of come into play. So what is a scoring chance? I think there's a lot of different definitions from an analytical perspective. The way I like to define it, and the way that was defined, I believe, by was War on Ice, is a shot attempt that is taken from areas of the ice where goals are more likely to be scored. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Generally speaking, the closer to the net you are, the better chance that a puck has to go in. This chart you see on the screen is from Natural Stat Trick. So this is what they use when they're counting their scoring chances, things like that. So there's yellow areas, purple areas, blue areas. We'll talk a little bit about what each of those mean here in just a minute. But in addition to location, there are a few other factors that can play into a scoring chance and making it a high danger chance, and that's going to be what are called events. So that's anything that happens after a shot is taken or leading up to a shot. So it can be maybe the shot was taken on the rush, it was taken off a rebound, it was blocked, all the things like that. There was a cross-ice pass before it happened. Like all of that stuff counts as an event and can factor into turning a scoring chance into a high danger chance, turning a normal shot into a scoring chance, things like that. So we'll start here with this graph. So like I said, this is from Natural Stat Trick, and there's 3 kind of different shaded areas. So it shows some probabilities. We're not going to jump in too deep into that. There is the article that's linked in my Hockey Analytics for Beginner, where it says click here, you see on that screen. That will bring you to Natural Stat Trick's kind of information on what all those numbers mean. But basically, that's a little bit of like probability in there, but we're not going to get into that. We'll focus on the colors. So the yellow, that's going to be like basically your shot attempts. That's like general Corsi. Like anything shot from there, probably not super dangerous. Unless something else happens, probably not a scoring chance. Next, you get into that next area, that kind of that purplish, pinkish area. Yes, Erickson Ek. This purple and blue area, that's where, if you remember that chart from last week where Erickson Ek, we saw with his shot attempts, like he lives in these scoring chance, high danger areas. So that purple area is going to be by default, no matter what else happens, that's going to be a scoring chance. And then regardless of anything else happening, that blue area, which is pretty much the front of the crease, I think that little like line right under where the numbers are, that's like technically the top of the crease. It's geometric versus curved, but that's going to be the high danger scoring area. Obviously, lots of goals are going to be scored right in front of the net. Makes sense. Banging in rebounds, getting in on a breakaway, things like that. Getting in tight in the goalie, that's where you're going to score a lot of your goals. But we aren't limited to high danger area chances just being in that blue oval. There are other things that, or that blue shape. Other things can happen to make it a high danger chance. So one way is a rebound. And a rebound is defined as any attempt made within 3 seconds of another blocked, missed, or save attempt without a stoppage in between. So you have your basic rebound, shot hits the goalie, comes back to a player, rebound. But that can also, in this case, it could be it hits the post, it misses the net and ricochets back out front, it hits a shin pad, whatever. As long as there's not a whistle or a stoppage in between, that's considered, for the case of a rebound. Things like that. So, and then if a shot is blocked, these shots are assigned like a point value. That value is going to be decreased by 1. So these shots are assigned a point value 1 to 3, 1 being your general like shot attempt, your Corsi from probably that yellow area. And then additional point is added if it's taken within that blue or that purplish area, making it a scoring chance. And then 2 points are added if it's within a high danger shot, for a total of 3 total points. And then those additional points can be added if it's the rush, rebound, things like that. So, for example, if there was a shot from that purple area, or that, maybe it's, for those of you that are listening to paint a better picture of it, the purple area basically kind of goes from like the top of the crease to the hash marks, and then a little bit to the left and right of the goalie, like kind of below the circles down into the crease. So if, say, there's a shot from that scoring chance area, it hits the goalie, comes back out, there's a rebound, even though that rebound is shot from that purple or that scoring chance area, because it's a rebound, that now becomes a high danger chance. Same thing would happen if it was a shot off the rush, if there was a pass before it, things like that. So I really like high danger chances because, I think a lot of times you can look at and go, oh, this team was, out attempted 60 to 40 in Corsi in a game, but maybe the team that had 60 attempts, 40 of those could have been, low danger shots, medium danger shots, where the team that had 40, maybe 30, this would be an astronomical high number, but for the sake of example, 30 of those were high danger chances, right? Like it's the quality over quantity that this kind of,
right.
It's that next breakdown. And then expected goals is the next layer beyond this, which we'll probably get into maybe next week. I'll look around and see if we want to jump into that next week or not. Depends on what happens with the Wild if we have time. But I really like it. I think it's really good. This is going to show you a lot of times the players who are higher up in those high danger chances, they're probably scoring more goals. People like Ek, they make their living in front of the net. They're guys you want to get the puck. They know how to get to the dirty areas, different things like that. So it's a really powerful tool. This is one I choose to include in my player cards. I factor it into player contribution score, both on the individual and on ice level. So ways you'll see this expressed if you're looking at this, scoring chances are SC, and then for and against F and A, and then there's that percentage share. Same with Corsi. And then there's also high danger chances is going to be HD for high danger, and then chances for CF. So some people also might call it like high danger Corsi. It's the same as a chance, the same letter. So that's how that's expressed. So I put those on my cards, and then anytime you see a lowercase I into that stat, it goes from counting as an on ice stat, which like Corsi is counted for everyone on the ice. Individual is how many individual high danger chances did a player have. So those are kind of the 3 different ways it can be expressed. So I really like it. I think it's a great stat. And usually there's oftentimes correlation to the team with more high danger chances for and fewer against in winning and losing games.
Awesome. Are you going to be posting player cards consistently again this year on your blog or on both blog, social media? Where can people find those? Because they're awesome, by the way, guys.
Yeah, so those will be up on my Twitter account, and then there'll be summaries of some kind. It might be a little dicey to start the year. I'm working on putting together a spreadsheet of kind of what that looks like.
Okay.
The blog will be more of like a written in terms of like trends and different things like that. Maybe like it'll probably have like here are the top 3 PCS performers from the past week, and that'll probably go up Monday evenings is my plan right now. I'll probably write that after I get home from work on Mondays or things like that, and then we'll discuss some of that stuff on this podcast on Wednesday. So
the dad joke maker in me wanted to jump in and be like, trends or trend ends.
Exactly. Hey, he could be. You never know. So we'll look at different things like that. So I want to kind of take those cards to the next level, and just kind of look at what line combinations are working, what players are playing well, who's excelling, and who's maybe not on the score sheet, but is maybe like there's tons of shots and data suggests that they're quote unquote due for a goal.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the stuff we'll be looking at there. And then on the team level, we'll look at different trends like, how does their shot attempt stack up for the rest of the league? How do expected goals stack up at 5-on-5? What is power play, penalty kill? And we'll look at stuff like that. So I don't know exactly how it's all going to take shape yet. It'll kind of be a winging on the fly, but I think, by within the first month, I'll have a pretty good idea of probably what those summaries look like. So.
And for those who might be jumping on the podcast episode 3 and didn't listen to episode 1 or 2, I will be posting every individual explanation of analytical tools on its own on the YouTube channel. And I'll hook you up with the links as well, Brett, once they're posted. So Sweet. For people who are just like searching on YouTube or on Google just to get a better understanding, they'll have, our 5 to 10 minute because I'm going to take a little bit of credit for this since I
you're the one
stream set up and I'm chilling here too. But Brett's explanation of analytics, and as the weeks go on, you guys will be able to further understand his player cards a little bit better and hopefully learn a little extra lens in which you can analyze the game as well as we get into the season here. So no, thanks for that again, Brett.
Yeah, you bet. I do have an article. I'll tweet out the link again tomorrow, just because I know I have there are new followers, maybe people that want a refresher on the cards, where I kind of walk through what each thing on there means, how the numbers calculate, what the numbers mean. That I'll repost that again tomorrow, so people can kind of see what that looks like.
Okay, cool. I've been posting. I know if you're listening to the podcast, it's too late, but I will post it in the description of this podcast if you're listening just via audio. If you're watching on YouTube, the link to Brett's blog is in the description. And if you're watching on YouTube live, it's in the live chat right now. So go check that out. Go follow him. And there's the article that he was talking about there. All right, let's get to our next segment here. Puck your opinions. And we have a few opinions here to get into, but which one do you want to start with?
I actually want to talk a little bit regression to the mean first, if that's all right, and then
sure.
So we'll do another. This is like not so much a stat, so that's why I wasn't really sure where to put this, but regression to the mean is a term used in kind of the statistical community, and it basically just means that when there's a large set of data in either direction, things happening, there's always an average, and there's a high likelihood that things will always kind of come back to the average, or will regress to the mean, which the mean is another word for average. So things will come back to the mean. So in terms of like hockey terms, the way that I use this a lot, I just talked in the previous segment about like, is a player due, right? So like if let's say a player has, they have 20 shots in a game or in a season, and maybe they're a career like 10% shooter, right? So if they have 20 shots on goal and they have no goals, like their statistics and their history say they probably should have 2. And like the average in the NHL, I think I looked this up a couple years ago, was like 9%. Like players will regress to the mean. Things should happen where that number start to balance out, where they should kind of come back to shooting their average of 10%. So that means goals will come. In this case, it might mean they score 3 goals in their next 3 games. But then over the season, somewhere or another. There'll be some hot spots, some low spots, different things like that. That's kind of like, and then there's two forms. There's positively regressing. So that would be a case of positive regression. The player hasn't scored yet. They probably should score in the future. Negative works the other way. So take the same sample. Let's say they're a career 10% shooter. And, now they've scored 5 goals in their first 20 shots, so now they're at 20%. Well, we can expect probably over the next couple games, maybe that not as many of those pucks are going to be going in. They're going to regress back to the mean. So there's positive regression, negative regression. So what I kind of wanted to dive into a little bit on this was the Wild and kind of looking at, as a team, where did they maybe overachieve a little bit? Where do they underachieve? And could we see regression in terms of improvement in those areas? So starting with the areas they overachieved, which I think surprising to no one, there wasn't a ton here. The one spot was at 5-on-5, their expected goals against per 60. So as a team, they were expected to give up 2.21 goals per game at 5-on-5, which was actually the best mark in the NHL. Like at 5-on-5, they were the best defensive team in the league. And despite that, still managed to miss the playoffs. Which
if you can't score, I mean,
right. And we'll talk about that in hopefully the positive regression section. So in terms of, do I think they'll negatively regress in this? Maybe a little bit. I mean, obviously it's pretty hard to stay as the best in the league defensively, but I mean, it's a lot of the same personnel coming back. You can argue they've gotten some players in Lauko, Trennan, guys who do defense well, a healthy Jared Spurgeon, a healthy Marcus Foligno. Like, these are all areas where these guys excel. The Wild, for going back to their origins in 2000 under Jacques Lemaire and other coaches, like, their identity has always been playing defense and playing it well. And we've seen that work for them. So could they regress a little bit negatively in this? I think a little bit, but I would still, my expectation, all things equal, should be that they're still probably top 10 in this in terms of the shot suppression that they are able to do and chance suppression they're able to achieve at 5-on-5. There are only other really two areas, just to tie it back to the previous segment: scoring chances and high danger chances against. Again, they were like, I think, top 8 to 10 in that stat as well. Which obviously that ties into expected goals. So I think all that, I think they should continue to be a good defensive team. Will they be the best in the NHL? Hard to say for sure, especially because we haven't seen them play a game yet. But all signs point to that, not a whole lot should have changed systematically with that. But I think to the area that fans would probably be a little more interested in is the areas that they underachieved and could possibly regress. I think the number one spot, no one will deny this, there's probably two key areas, and I think that's the penalty kill and the goaltending. I'll start with the penalty kill. They have the third worst. What's up, Andrew? Third worst in the NHL at 74.5% last year. The mean or the average for the league was around 79, 80%. And I hope, I have no other thing than gut feeling, and hoping the math works out here, that they will sort of positively regress back around that 80%. We saw at times, I think, like Jake Lucchini was killing penalties for this team at points last year. Like, they were scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, it was rough.
We've already heard they've made changes with how they're going to be defending zone entries. They're trying to get players like Boldy onto the penalty kill. Obviously, penalty killing is something that Trennan's really good at, something they brought him in for. I believe it was Lauko and Husendinov that were together during the preseason, and they looked awesome.
I know. I was actually talking about that pairing with Hoppy today. Like, the penalty kill actually looks pretty damn good with the guys that they have right now.
Yeah. So again, barring injuries, I think we'll hopefully see like better
barring injuries, but like deep even with injuries. Let's be honest, because like it's not like they're going to be scraping bottom of the barrel. They'll be using guys that they at least have that were going down last year, whereas now they have like 2 extra guys who are good in that. Or I guess I'll count it as 3, and Husendinov now having a full season, and Lauko, Husendinov, and Trennan now.
Right. Yeah. And we're seeing, I don't think like guys like Freddie Gaudreau, who I think the previous 2 seasons has been kind of like one of their top minute munchers. I don't think he's playing nearly as much now. I think the first unit was Ek and Trennan, I think. And then I think it's Lauko, Husendinov, and then maybe Gaudreau's on the third one. But basically, like, some of the guys that have had lots of time before aren't getting as much. So obviously we heard trying to get Boldy worked in. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they even try to work him with Ek, given they're playing together at 5-on-5.
I like all of that, right?
Yeah, so we'll see where he fits in. But I think we can expect to see some positive regression on the penalty kill. Another area where I think hopefully we'll see some more positive regression is finishing. So much like the Wild have historically been a team that defends really well, they've also been a team outside of kind of that one anomaly year where there was tons of players that had like career years in terms of scoring goals, is their finishing, which is basically, are you scoring as much as expected goals say you should be scoring, and are you scoring on the chances that you should be scoring on? So last year they were at about 2.45, 5v5 goals for per 60. That was the 10th worst mark in the NHL. So not bottom of the barrel, but still kind of that bottom third. League average, a little bit higher, 2.51. Doesn't seem like a big jump, 0.06, but you take that over 82 games in a season, that's probably adding up to, somewhere between 5 to 10 more goals over the course of the year, which, in some of those 1-goal games, that can make a huge difference. You look at overtime goals, things like that. So again, I think healthy Kaprizov, healthy Boldy, Ek, you have Rossi now in the top 6. You're hoping for some bounce back seasons from Zuccarello, Hartman, some of those guys, Goudreau. There are guys in the team that can score. We should hopefully see a little bit maybe more offensive punch from the blue line with Spurgeon back, Faber being maybe able to be a little more offensive, being on power play 1, having Brodin next to him, being able to jump up in the play a little bit more than he was maybe able to do with someone like Middleton. So I do think, this is one where I wouldn't be surprised if they're around the same mark. It's just historically they haven't been a team that pumps the puck in a ton at 5-on-5. But, you even look at it, 2.45 goals for per 60, 2.21 goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. So like the difference is they're still outscoring their opponents at 5v5. They're just on the lower ends of both those spectrums in terms of really good defensively, not quite as good offensively. But if, that takes a big step forward, maybe now that's what really propels the team in the playoffs, right? Is, hey, the defense is maintained, and maybe now they're scoring a little bit more every game. And then the last one, I think it goes a little bit without saying, is the goaltending. 3.17 goals against per 60 last year. That was 12th worst in the NHL. 0.897 save percentage. That was the 9th worst. And according to Natural Stat Trick, negative 30.61 goal save above expected last year, which was the 2nd worst in the NHL. So goals against, they were at 3.17. The mean is about 3.04. I do think the season that Gus had last year, I think we talked about this maybe on a previous one, but I think we've seen the best of Gus, and I think we've seen the worst of Gus. I think the Gus we'll see from here on out is probably somewhere in the middle there. Fleury, is just, he's aging, so maybe is his
he's
season
still around. He's still here.
Yeah, they still think highly enough of him where, they decided to bring him back for one more year, but there's still a guy we've seen make acrobatic saves for a 40-year-old goaltender. And obviously Jesper Wallstedt, who should hopefully, as he gets more reps, is around the team more, adjust to NHL speed. We saw him win, I think it was 3 straight games, granted against bottom of the barrel teams last year, but games he still won. He had some really nice outings in the preseason, I think including against Dallas, where he stopped like 38-40 or something in that one, where he was taking pucks all game on the road with a pretty bare bones team in front of him, and he was still making them saves against a lot of NHL players. So I think, and then you look at and then having 3 goalies, and we'll talk about this more in the Puck Your Opinion section, but I think keeping those guys fresh, healthy could, end up, especially when you have older goaltenders, maybe guys who struggle with a little consistency like Gustafsson, having a 3 goalie rotation, kind of keep them on their toes. They're fighting for starts. They're practicing harder because their time in net's limited, all those kinds of things. I do think that the save percentage has to be better. And an area was really bad is the penalty kill. And part of the penalty kill improving, I think, is going to be the goaltending improving while in the penalty kill. There's a lot of this stuff that kind of ties in together. I expect it to be better.
Yeah. No, for sure. I honestly like how special teams overall just seem to be a little bit deeper with, obviously, knock on wood, healthy right now, but healthy defense options with guys who can move the puck and actually work and quarterback a power play, and now options on the penalty kill, which really needed to be addressed, as you showed.
Right. So, and then goal save above expected. That's a stat that we'll get to in a couple weeks probably, but basically it's a number that measures where you're stopping the shots that you were supposed to, and the Wild stopped about 31 fewer, fewer than they were expected to. So, second worst. I don't think they have the second worst goalie tandem in the NHL, or trio, I guess you could argue now. But I think that's got to get better. So, and those are 3 things. Like if the scoring goes up a little bit, and like I don't think like they don't have to have a Vezina goalie performance. They don't have to have a top 5 power play and penalty kill. Like the way they play at 5-on-5, all those things just like are just like average or just like ever so slightly below average, like just below, like in that like 13 to 20 range. If they can fall in there with their special teams, their goaltending, they are going to be miles better, I think, than a lot of people think they will be.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm just giddy to talk about this next topic
Oh yeah.
here. So anything else we need to get into as we
Nah,
wrap up the first half of the show?
I think that's it. So hopefully I'll have your analytics fill and I haven't melted your brain too much, but I think
I love it.
I think there'll be a lot of consensus on this next topic.
Yeah, for sure. All right, now we're getting into puck your opinions, and Brett, let's get into it. Merrill versus Chisholm, is it the right play? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of a big surprise. I think we saw practice reports, I think it was yesterday, from both Dylan Laux and Michael Russo that John Merrill seemed to be kind of more of the mainstay alongside Zach Bogosian on the third pair yesterday. Part of me was wondering like, oh, is this prep for, are they figuring out what's going to happen? Is Chisholm going to bump up when, maybe Middleton misses time? Is Hunt going to pop up, and they're trying to figure out like what the defense is going to look like in that absence? And nope, it turns out that it appears the coaching staff was not too happy with some cross-ice turnovers that Chisholm had made in the last couple preseason games. And it now seems like John Merrill, who just feels inevitable no matter where he is. It went from, could this be a guy that goes on waivers, to he's the 8th defenseman over Damon Hunt, to, oh no, now he's the opening
Now he's
night.
actually playing. Yeah.
Now he's the opening night number 6 defenseman. So, I mean, if you follow me on
Twitter, big sigh.
Yeah, like John Merrill, the person, phenomenal person. Love John Merrill, the person, but he's just an awful hockey player. I will say, I was going to pull numbers, but it felt like too much work. But I will say, toward the end of last year, he was better. I think like his last third of the season was much better than the first 2/3. But to be fair, that bar was on the floor. So I personally don't like it. I thought Chisholm kind of made sense as a guy in your third pair. He's a guy that can skate, not afraid to move the puck, will jump up in the play. Obviously plays a little bit of special teams, was going to play power, was playing often on power play 2. Like we thought at one point he might be quarterbacking power play 1. So I still think is there things that he does maybe that aren't as good as Merrill? Potentially, but I think the all around game, I'm more of a Chisholm fan than a Merrill fan, but I would imagine maybe this is a quick, like, hey, you're going to think about these mistakes. We're going to coach you through them here. And then by game 3, we're getting you back in the lineup, especially with how many,
it better be that way.
Especially with how many games they have in the first.
And look, Chisholm didn't blow me away in the preseason. Don't get me wrong, but he played damn good last year upon acquiring him. I'm not going to lie. I didn't watch a lot of his play in Winnipeg. He played damn good for Minnesota upon acquiring him. And throughout the preseason, I'll say this, though Chisholm didn't impress me too much, he's likely going to be a guy that you end up leaning on and having to lean on more this year than that of a Merrill, given just how Merrill has been with the Wild. And B, Merrill didn't have a good preseason either.
No.
Like Hunt played way better than Merrill in every single game that they played together or games that they played separately. And the fact that Merrill, even over Hunt at this point, is getting the opening night or the start of the season game, it's just opening night game. It's just
it's almost like
I don't like it, dude.
It's almost like a light version of the Ogren versus Johansson argument. Like, it's like, did Chisholm do anything to like warrant the spot? Maybe not, but did he outplay Merrill? Probably, but like, did Merrill outplay him? I doubt it.
That's a good point, because it's same with Ogren. Like, did he blow our expectations out of the water to earn it? Not necessarily, but did Johansson play better than him? Not really. They were both kind of the same. And if you're gonna go with the younger guy, like, let's see what you got there.
Yeah. So I was just surprised that this ended up being like Merrill, like the way we heard people, like the way Damon Hunt was talked about. And like, I think you look at what he brings in terms of Damon Hunt, like we talked a lot about Hunt. I think it was last week, like how we like his speed, his ability to be physical, like just kind of a do-it-all defenseman, maybe not like amazing at one thing, but pretty well-rounded at everything.
Yeah.
I was surprised they didn't. I mean, maybe it's because they sent him down and it's probably for salary cap reasons. They don't want to waive Merrill this early in the season for probably reasons that they have that I don't know. But Yeah, that's a good point too. I think from Ron there that Chisholm's also sick, but it sounds like he was sick today. It still sounded like so. Whatever the
He
reason
was
is,
sick like us when he found out that Merrill was playing instead of
yeah,
him.
he's like, we don't waive that guy yet, but yeah. So those are the Rampum charts from last year's. This is from Evolving Hockey. They do great work. So stats across the bottom there: goals for per 60, expected goals for per 60, shot attempts per 60, and then expected goals against per 60, and shot attempts against per 60. So like relatively comparable, like defensively. Merrill a little bit of a black hole there when it comes to the generating offense, where obviously you see a little bit more from Chisholm there with the higher expected goals for per 60, and then a little bit better at shot suppression. So like they're pretty similar, but Merrill on paper still looks a little bit worse. And I think to most who watch hockey would agree the eye test kind of agrees with that too. But I don't think this is a permanent thing. Like they have a lot of games to start the year. Maybe it is just he's sick and we're reading into it too much. There's a even bigger look at a bunch of different advanced stats, and you can kind of go head to head on almost all of them, and it's probably Chisholm getting the edge. Sample size aside, but I think Chisholm's back in the lineup relatively quickly. Like I don't think there's going to be a lot that John Merrill can do. I kind of hope, and just to like a little teaser, like I have really good pictures from my player cards this year, but I did kind of put a meme one in for Merrill. So either he needs to have a really good game or just a god awful game, so I can post his card because usually post like 4 to 5 per game, and I really want to post his funny one. So little teaser for it. I'm not going to reveal what it is, but
it's just frustrating because again, he's one of those guys who's like he's been playing pro for a while. The coach, like a few different coaches now have just trusted him. But then we're 20 games into the season and he's the reason they get scored on late, or his minutes get diminished halfway through the game, but he just keeps getting chance after chance. It's like, what is it that the coaching staff see in him and management at this point, to be honest, since they still have him? What do they see in him that we don't? And furthermore, why do they keep putting him out there knowing that, like I just said, they're going to have to eventually find someone better or reduce his time because he becomes a liability versus just a body out there? Because sometimes you can work with just a body, but when you work with a body that's a liability, that's a different story.
Right. It's just a weird, like, if it is like, oh, we're upset with Chisholm's turnovers, and it's like, have you watched John Merrill play hockey? Like, This guy's not a saint with the puck on his stick. It's like constantly watching him getting caught flat-footed or ringing a puck up the boards, and there was a guy wide open in the middle of the ice.
He had one good year, and it wasn't with the Wild, but he had one good year before joining the Wild. I'll give him that.
Like, is he a guy that can be like a seventh defenseman that, hey, you have like in this situation where Chisholm is sick and he can fill in for a game? Sure. But, I'm not going to read into it too much unless it becomes like if we're 3 weeks into the season and John Merrill's played every game, then I'm going to be like, all right, what are we doing here?
Yeah, what is going on here?
And now watch, he's going to go off and he's going to be great, and I'm going to eat my words in 3 weeks. But I hope
like 30 points and be an analytics darling by the end.
Which, hey, if that happens, all the power. Great.
Oh,
like make me eat my words, John Merrill.
Yeah.
Please. But
Russo's mentions are going to be crazy if that happens.
Yeah. Probably.
Oh man. All right. What else do you want to get into?
Let's talk about the next one because which is Rossi being named the first line center.
Yes.
So I want to preface this with, I know we talked first week, like I assembled my ideal lineup, and for that I had Rossi at the third line center.
Which I liked, by the way. I agreed with you, and I thought that was the right move because we need secondary freaking scoring on this team. But anyways.
Right. So like, and I said, I think that it created a little more balance. It could hopefully get, Hartman doing what he does best. So like it was more about trying to get Hartman going than Rossi. Like, I think you could put Rossi on any line 1 through 3 and he's going to succeed. And I think, I have no issues with this decision. Like I'm still curious mostly to see if Hartman's defense can either be maintained or kind of come back to what it was before he's with the Wild playing on that third line. But I'm excited to see what Rossi can do here at, between Kaprizov, Zuccarello. Like I think, like, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but he was pretty good. I think when he played with Kaprizov last season. And we've seen him just like, he's very smart. Like Rossi thinks the game well. Like he knows when to stay high and be kind of that third guy, letting the other guys forecheck. But he also knows the right time to go into the front of the net, attack. Like we saw him score a ton of goals in front of the net last year. Like he obviously isn't the same archetype player as Eriksson Ek, but they do a lot of the similar things, right? They push play, they can drive play. They're both good two ways. They both can go to the net, and so. And we saw him as 21 goals, 19 assists. So more of a playmaker in juniors, but looked like he was a 50-50 split last year. I think when we were talking about him as a prospect, we maybe looked at him as a little more of a playmaker, but now you have three guys on your line in Kaprizov, Rossi, Zuccarello, who are all great passers. You have two really good finishers in Kaprizov and, Rossi, not an elite finisher, but shows he has some scoring touch in and around the net. And, it sounds like he's gotten stronger, faster over the offseason. So I'm kind of curious, like, what do you think, like, what's his ceiling? Because I think obviously in a third line kind of like checking role, it was maybe more of like, I think we talked like if he's around the same, like 20 goals, 20 assists, 40, 45 points, like it is, we were like, that's probably about right for a third line center. But what does that increase to if he maintains kind of that 1C role playing with two of the Wild's most prolific wingers?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like if he plays 1C all year and it just plays as good / better as a result, better than even played last year, doing the little things, but also obviously his points increasing, his offense just
25, 40,
being more involved. Yeah, I think he could honestly get like
points.
Oh, I was thinking like 75. If he's if he's involved in almost every play with Kirill, then like dude, like easy 70.
Yeah, which and it's interesting too because and I don't know, we've seen some extensions I think go out recently to Cole Perfetti, and there was another pretty good comparable. Maybe Dawson Mercer, I think in New Jersey got an extension recently, maybe. I don't know. It was Perfetti and one other who like got similar, like it was like 2-year, like $3.50 extensions. X still is the PP1 center. So like I think I lost my train of thought now. So like it'll be interesting to see what he does this year and how it could, like if he stays 1C, what does that next contract look like? And obviously like there's a lot of ifs that play into this, but like you're talking, okay, if you're paying a good two-way, maybe like 40, 45 point center on a bridge deal versus all of a sudden now we have a 70-point center. Like, do we want to give a bridge deal? Can we, or do we have to pay him? And then it becomes, okay, can we pay him now? So it'll be really interesting. I think there's a lot of different ways it could go for Rossi this season. And again, I think he's a great tool that they can move anywhere in the lineup, and I think he'll find success and adapt his game to whatever role he's being asked to play.
Yeah, like if he fits in and it works out, which I imagine it will, because I think he's that cerebral of a player. Then he's gonna have a great year, and I think the ceiling is high. The ceiling is as what we thought it was when they drafted him, sort of thing. And it's like, he can be a top center when he plays with a top wingers. Someone to Kirill's caliber, even if it was someone like a step below Kirill, right? Because Kirill's superstar, even if he just had like a star player, you're gonna see that out of Rossi, and we just haven't seen him have the opportunity throughout a full season or a good chunk of time to just be that player, play or have that chemistry, be able to have the opportunity to build that chemistry with a player of that caliber either, which just because the Wild really only have two right now, one superstar and then two other players in Ek and Boldy who are that tier above the rest, right?
Yeah, and I think the other thing too with Rossi at 1C is I think on the third line he probably is the one that has to kind of drive that line a little bit, right? If there's going to be offense, he's probably has to be the one that starts to create it. But I think in a top 6 role, like to your point, like he might be able to be a little bit more of that like really high end complementary piece, right? Like almost, like kind of like in the way that that's kind of what Zach Hyman's been his whole career, right? Like Zach Hyman's probably not going to the Anaheim Ducks and scoring 50 goals, like because he's not necessarily the one driving the offensive bus, but he's the perfect complementary piece to play with McDavid. He knows how to go to the net. He knows how to get a stick on the ice. He knows how to score goals. He's the perfect complement. Like that's where I see Rossi fitting in with Kaprizov really well, or even if it ends up being with Boldy or Ek, if it's on the wing or at center, like if he's in the top 6, he doesn't have to be the one that can drive the line because there's wingers and, if it's Ek, Kaprizov, Boley, whoever it ends up being, like those guys have proven and shown they can be the ones to drive the play. Get that second guy in there that can complement what they do well, go to the net, bang in goals. So I think it'll be really exciting, I think, to see what he can do. So I'm really excited for him. Obviously love Rossi, and I'm really hoping that we can see a kind of of sorts from him this year.
I'm excited for him. What I'm not excited for is that now the third and fourth line are like strictly shutdown lines, which is fine. We were talking about having a defensive team is fine, but like
I'm not going to write off that fourth line yet. Lauko had some really good preseason things. We've seen obviously who's
writing them off. I'm just saying like they're not going to be that second line that we hoped we might have saw, coming into opening night. Now, I will say that like this is a contract year for Marcus Johansson. And when does Marcus Johansson perform? Both contract his time years with the Capitals and with the Minnesota Wild contract years. So like watch him go off, get 15 to 20 goals, 40 to 50 points and be like, okay, all right, we're good with you as our second line, as a second line winger this year. We'll move on from you next year. Someone can pay you your money.
Yeah. I think LaPanta would throw a parade if that happened. If Johansson had a 40-point season, he'd be pulling out some receipts, I think.
Yeah. But, no, and look, I think Kuznetsov is great. Like I'm really high on Kuznetsov. Or sorry, Kuznetsov. I did that on the last show too. I was just I don't know why I think it's because recently I've just been watching KHL post like crazy all their highlights, and Kuznetsov was one I saw recently. But anyways, no, because I just even saw in the live chat here, you guys are asking us who's Nadinov. No, he's an awesome two-way player who's like an absolute lunatic when it comes to like his defensive abilities, his ability to pick pockets, jump in front of shots. He will block shots like a madman, as well as also be offensively aware if he's in the offensive zone, if he does need to carry the puck over the blue line, if he does need to lead rushes. But where I think he's going to be valuable for this team and where I know he is going to be used right now is more of his two-way game with, that capability to get involved in the offense, especially if they're not shutting down top lines and he's actually going up against other, I don't want to say easier matchups as the NHL, but you know what I mean. I'm just going to say easier matchups than having to go up against other teams' top lines. But if you are putting out him to shut down top lines, that's a good thing. That means that is awesome, because obviously that frees from like a coaching perspective and a strategic perspective. That gives you the opportunity to put out, Kirill against, not the Connor McDavid line, not the, X, Y, and Z other teams' top lines.
Right. And I think, we've seen him have success scoring in the KHL with good talent around him when he was with SKA. So I think, in a pinch, if, you have an injury to somewhere in your top 9, notably down the middle, whether it's a Hartman or a Rossi or an Ek, like, not to say he can step in and fill that role perfectly, but I think he'll have a little more success than previously when that was, Sam Steele or Freddie Gaudreau.
Oh, yeah.
Being the one elevated, right? So, that's the great thing about their lineup is, I have a lot more confidence in a Kuznetsov, Lauko, Gaudreau line going out there against a team's top line, maybe if it's a road game, than I did with Vinny Lettieri, Jake Lucchini, and Mason Shaw, right?
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah,
cool guys, good players, but I have a lot more confidence in the former than the latter in that case.
I'm loving how the bottom 6 is looking. It's just I really just want offense to come from that second line, and who knows, maybe Johansson is not even a factor, and Boldy and Ek will just rip it up regardless, But I'm confident, because Marcus Johansson had 30 points last year. I'm confident if he plays most of the year with these two, which again, who knows. Hockey seasons are long, 82 games. It's a long season, guys. Let's just assume he does. Like, I do think he's going to get more than 30 points this year, whether he goes on streaks or not. Like, he'll get 35 to 40 this year playing with those guys. I truly think so, especially with Boldy taking a step forward and Ek obviously just being one of the best players on the team and one of the best two-way players in the league.
Yeah, I'm just gonna their YouTube comment about the Wild being small and that bigger teams will win. I can't remember who tweeted out, but there's like the Florida Panthers were like the 29th smallest team in the league, and they just won the cup. So I don't buy into you have to be big to be good. If you're big like Joel Eriksson Ek and you're good, sure, but if you're big like Ryan Reeves, that it doesn't matter. Like you still have to do the results. So it's I think
big teams who can skate, like we saw with St. Louis a few years ago, like it worked because they had big talented guys. But not every team has the luxury of having big talented guys who can move, right?
Yeah, I mean, you still look at. I mean, you have
that many goals.
You look at their back end. Bogosian's a bigger body, right? He can play physical. You have that Middleton. You know, when you've got your that third line that we didn't talk much about it, but like that's now Ryan Hartman, Marcus Foligno, and Yakov Trenin. Like,
yeah, I don't think the two-way game and playing bigger teams is the Wild's issue at all. I think the Wild's issue is figuring out what the hell is going on with their goaltending and where the secondary scoring is coming from. Like the Central Division is tough, and like we're not here saying that like, oh yeah, the Wild are gonna make the playoffs. Like if the Wild make the playoffs, like
I'll sit here and say that I think they will.
Okay. Well, Brett will come. I don't think they will. I think that they'll be knocking on the door, but I think the Central is a very deep and one of the better divisions, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to get a playoff spot.
Well, and I think like a lot of people are kind of like immediately crowning. I think like Dallas and Colorado. Dallas, I'm not going to fight. They've.
I don't think Colorado. I think more people are crowning Nashville, and for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still this notion that Colorado's right there, but like Landeskog's still injured. Like we still really don't know what the hell is going on with Val Nichushkin, and then like I don't even know who their third line center is. Like it's not someone like great. Like it's probably not someone that's better than like a Ryan Hartman. Like they have obviously like really high end talent, but like at the top of the lineup, but you know their goaltending's nothing like outstanding. Like Georgiev was very pedestrian last year. Like Colorado doesn't scare me as much as they used to. Like if
me neither, but I think
all those guys come back. But like
to
my point is like I think like Dallas is kind of the clear number one, and then there's like I think you could look for Utah, Minnesota, Nashville, Colorado, and maybe St. Louis, but probably not St. Louis. Like and Winnipeg would be the other one in there. Like those are all teams I think
people
that could go in any order.
Sleeping on Winnipeg. No one's done their research on some of the guys that are coming up that they're straight up replacing on their back end, and some of them are absolute monsters coming up from the AHL and who actually can skate, who are physical, and who put up points there. Just some sleeper picks that like again you just like
they'll be as good as Hellebuck can make them.
Well, I mean, and look, true, but like. A lot of people are like, well, they're losing a lot of spots on the back end and they won't fill in this spot. It's like they're giving guys opportunities to do so, and they have some sick guys that fit their mold. So like for me, I think like Winnipeg has a better shot at making it than Minnesota, but for me, Colorado's still there, but I think they're holding on to that I guess that throne of dominance. They're trying to still stay on it, but they're
reputation.
Not quite there. Yeah, but I still think they're going to be good. I mean,
they're still going to be a good team, but like I don't think like where last year I would have said they were a step above the Wild. Like I don't think that's the case now. Like I look at most of the Central Division, like I think there's we have 8 teams in the division now. I think there's 5 teams that are probably 6 that are legit playoff contenders. I think it's going to make it fun. I think obviously the big thing for the Wild is whatever they were last year. It was like 13-1 or something against like Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, and Nashville. I think like it was some horrible number. Like obviously,
I don't think it's going to be that bad. What I'm saying,
they got to go improve it and be better.
Yeah, what I'm saying is like this, like a lot of the teams other than Colorado, every other team like above or hanging around the Wild got better. I mean, other than St. Louis, St. Louis.
I think the Wild got better too. Like I think they added some good pieces there, and I think they're better just by the sheer fact that they're healthy. Like they're. Outside of a potential Chisholm illness, and there's been a couple of guys banged up through the preseason, but they're projected to go in, knock on wood, between as long as nothing happens in pregame warm-ups tomorrow to enter night 1 with a fully healthy roster. So
yeah, I think it's a possibility. I'm not super confident the Wild make the playoffs just because I'm higher on Winnipeg than most. I'm like realistic because I actually did like a deep dive on Seth's show, Locked on Wild, and I was like, holy fucking shit, they actually got some really good players. Now, again, I haven't looked at who's gonna make the team out of camp, but I was like, oh man, they got depth. they got depth with guys who've actually played in the show like close to 100 games too. So some of the big holes that they have to fill. I'm interested as a hockey fan, who nerds out in the whole league to see what they're gonna do. But no, I totally agree. Dallas at the top. Yeah, Nashville's gonna be fascinating. But I got Dallas at the top, Nashville, then the Avs, Winnipeg, and then Wild. But like Wild and Winnipeg are kind of interchangeable. We'll see.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd fight you on that. I think like the interesting thing with Nashville is like they sign players some pretty big names who have historically been pretty good, but it's also a lot of guys on the wrong side of 30, and you wonder like.
Yeah, but this is a Nashville system that's like
it works. Right?
The guys who can skate are gonna skate. The rest we're gonna go full Jack Lemaire, baby.
Yeah, I'm just interested to see how they it's an older veteran team, and does it do those older players like do they burn out toward the end of the year? Do they maintain like? What does Steven Stamkos look like his first year away from Tampa? Like I think there's a lot of cool storylines there, and I think the division's going to be fun this year. I think the game should be entertaining, like because I think if you're a team or a coach and like they're not naive to who's been picked up, and like I think you look at the Pacific, definitely probably weaker division than Central. Like I think Pacific, you probably have 3 teams you feel pretty good about, and then you probably have like 3 that you're like maybe. And then like some bottom, obviously like the bottom feeders in California, LA aside, but like it'll be really interesting because I think every game is going to matter so much in the Central Division this year because it's
and Chicago got better where it's like okay, Chicago's not just like that easy pushover game anymore where it's like they could be they could be annoying.
It was preseason, but they didn't look very good in preseason.
They could be annoying. Like they there's no doubt they acquired pieces to be a little bit more competitive. Yeah, now they're still going to lose more games, but what I'm saying is like they're just going to be harder to play against. Right. Like I mean, Bertuzzi's there. They're going to be annoying to play against. Like, with just him alone, that rat. Yeah. Oh man. Final thing we got to talk about here before we hang up the skates. Jesper Wallstedt signs an extension
out of nowhere,
nowhere. And honestly, I'm just going to say it. I don't like this at all.
You don't like it? Okay.
I don't like it at all. Yeah. Now, like, is it probably going to be like, oh, wow, that's such a bargain once he's playing a lot of games? Sure. But like, I'm just one of those that's just like, I think it's just still a dice roll. Like you don't sign guys to extensions who haven't played yet. You just don't do that. Like, and it's like, yeah, he's played AHL pro and every now and then NHL teams will sign a goalie overseas. But even then, they're signing the goalie to like $1 million for 1 year to see like, okay, can you even play in North America? Now, I have all the confidence in the world for Jesper Wallstedt. Even when we did our prospect ranking show, though I had, who's the team of higher than you guys? I had Wallstedt at number 1. I think he's the best prospect that we have in the system. I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be good. But like it just seems wild to me. Weird. And wild that he signed to an extension already in the big show and he hasn't even played yet. Now, there's obviously the option this year, because it kicks in next year. There's obviously the option this year for him to be sent down, and that makes sense because they got two goalies on a one-way deal. It makes sense. They're going with the three goalie rotation this year. It's just I don't know, man. Like talk me into just feeling a little bit better about it because I just don't like guys getting paid without us even seeing what they can do yet.
Yeah, I think that's valid. Like I think if there was a reason to be alarmed by it, that's probably the reason. Like usually like you usually hear like a whisper from Russo or some of the other like insiders that like like the Wild and Jesper Wallstedt are talking about extensions, and it just all of a sudden it was like, oh, he got extended and okay, like the Wild Twitter account's one that like broke the news, right? Like they were the first ones to have it or whatever. So like, but as we've seen with Bill Guerin, like this is a GM that likes to go out and get his guys. So like, was it surprising? Yes, but like, are we surprised that it happened? No. Yeah. Right? Like I think you look at he extend Hart, like all of his pending, like he likes to get things done a year before they have to. And to your point, I think there are situations like Middleton, Foligno, Hartman, where like maybe you should have waited. But I think when you look at Wallstedt, I think it's a little bit different. I mean, this is a guy that's widely considered to be the best goaltender outside the NHL. Now, obviously in it, but like the best goaltending prospect in the league. he's pretty much done everything he can in Iowa at this point. Like, he's been an all-star down there. He's dominated the AHL pretty much the best that he can. Like, and now, he gets to learn from a Hall of Fame goaltender, sit next to him in the stall and play a whole season and travel alongside Marc-Andre Fleury. And,
I just think it's timing, like our boy Horodox said in the live, just like, it's just art. It's just a weird timing for it, where it's like, yeah, if he's had some games already this year and we're like, okay, well, like, he's obviously going to get that spot next year. Like, and this obviously shows that the Wild are very confident that he is the future. They're like, if we had any questions, like, they're answered now. He's extended.
Yeah. It's a bet on talent to me. And
it is. No, it is a gamble. And again, I'm confident it's going to work out. It's just like, this came out of nowhere, and okay, yep, he's going to be the guy, and he's getting paid more than just like 1.5 mil. Like, he is going to be their goalie.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of this now obviously is like, they've clearly shown some faith. Like, I think there was, like, not that we doubted that he'd be up here like all season, but I think this is the bet on his talent, a little bit of maybe like a confidence to him. It's like, hey, we believe that you can be a part of this team. I'm just curious, and this is like not as extension related, but more it's just like goalies as a whole. Like, we know this, we've talked a lot about this 3 goalie rotation. Like, I don't think we've talked, too much about, what do we think that looks like? Like, is it a 33-33-33 split? I lean no, but I don't know what it is. Like, what do you, if you had to put your money on or like split it up in terms
this
of,
is what I think. I think if Gustafsson plays well, Wallstedt's going back down. If he doesn't, then he's going to be in the box until they find anybody who wants him at this point, because they'll be like, whatever, we really don't need you this year yet. We don't need you, and we'll find somebody else next year.
Yeah, good point from Elon there in the chat. The offer sheet, avoiding that is another big reason for the extension. But to your point, you still could have avoided that by waiting to do it. But
you're for like 2 months.
Yeah, but
3 months. Whatever.
Yeah, I see. I'm a little bit in a different camp. Like, I think Wallstedt will go up and down, but I don't think it's dependent on how the others play. Like, they know they want to get him games,
because injury is a cop-out answer. I'm not going to say every injury is obvious, but like, I think they really are, like you mentioned it early in the show, Brett. Like, we've seen the best and the worst from Gustafsson. If he shows the worst side again, it's like, all right, let's see what our young guy has, who we literally just invested in now, and who's going to play a lot next year. Fleury, you're going to get your farewell tour games. We brought you back for that. There's no other reason other than that. Because we can't say no to you. But yeah, like, they're going to give Gustafsson the ability to prove himself, just like Wallstedt, but like, what shows me now that they're going to give a little bit, obviously not even a little bit, a lot more rope to Wallstedt, is the fact that they gave him this contract, and then obviously he's still gonna have to prove stuff, but like, he doesn't have to prove as much to keep his job as Gus now, when Wallstedt clearly just got this contract and is gonna have a job lined up next year.
Yeah, I think if you had to put a percentage on how many games Wallstedt starts, what's that percentage for you?
What's that?
If you had to put a percentage on how many games Wallstedt starts or plays in, what do you think that percentage is?
I would say no more than 10%, dude, to be perfectly honest.
See, I think it's closer to 30%. I think Gus is kind of the 1A, and Fleury and Wallstedt are kind of the 1B. So I think it sounds weird, but I think like Gus plays maybe 40 to 50%, and then I think Gus and Fleury maybe split that other, either 50 to 60%, like 50-50. So I would argue, like, so it's like Wallstedt plays 30%, Fleury plays 30%, and Gustafsson plays 40%. Like, they want to get this guy games. Like, not sending him down to start the year, I think, is a big testament to that. Like, they could send him down and be a part of Iowa's camp, but they want him around the team. They want him playing. But
I'm
obviously,
fine with him being around the team. But like, if they're gonna give him games, like, give him games. But it's just, it's just tough, given how important October is for the Wild, given like this crazy road trip. And it's like, really, you're going with the carousel now? Like, this, like, And I get you have to get answers in the beginning of the season, but it's just this season, it just sucks the way the schedule is. And it's like, this is just not the time to do this.
And the interesting thing to your point and to some of the chat's point is, what happens if one of these three does kind of like emerge, right? Like what happens after that? Because like the plan is obviously like a 3 goalie rotation, but it'll be interesting to see like if Gus gets hot or if Wallstedt gets hot and they like, oh, we plan to start this guy, but all of a sudden, Wallstedt's won 3 in a row. Like, do we go to Gus here? Do we let Wallstedt go for 4 in a row? And just seeing how they like ride the hot hand, and if they do that, or if they stick to a pretty like methodical rotation of some kind. Because it sounds like
lucky they're in Pittsburgh early this year. Because like, imagine if they each got hot and it's like, oh, but we're going through Pittsburgh again. It's Fleury's last year, and it's just like, fuck, dude. Like, I don't want that to even be in the coaches or GM's brain at all. So it's. Again, I think I'm in the minority when I said that like Fleury coming back 1 year kind of fucked everything up a little bit.
Yeah, so that's kind of like my last point on this is you look at, I think Gustafsson's contract is like 3.5 or 3.7, something around there, and then now obviously Wallstedt locked in next year like 2.2, and there obviously has been a lot of talk about will they trade Gus? If he starts hot, can you move him? Like, do you move him in the offseason if he has like a bounce back year where he's like middle of the road? I look at this and go, okay, if Gus has a decent year, if Wallstedt at 2.2, you got less than, it'd be just a shade under 7 million or 6 million locked up in your goaltending. And now you can put a whole roster. You get 2 years of that. So I think Gus Sims a 3-year. I think he's in year 2 of his 3-year extension. Like, you got 2 goalies at like 3.7 and 2.2. Like, that's pretty good numbers for a pretty solid goaltending tandem. So I do wonder if, this isn't like this wasn't rumored anywhere, but I do wonder if there's maybe a long-term play in looking at what are you tying up in your goaltending, maybe assuming now that you're going to keep Gustafsson as long as he has a good season. Yeah. Because now you can now invest, instead of, having 8 to 10 million locked up in your goaltending, you have 6 to 7. And now you can use that money to upgrade your forwards, upgrade your defensemen, and spend elsewhere. Give it to Kaprizov or whoever else that you need.
Yeah. And look, this is, I guess, not the worst problem to have when you have 3 options, right? It's just like timeline wise, I love Marc-Andre Fleury. I'm like Canadian over here. Guy's been involved in gold medals at every level. Like I love that man. I've loved what he's done for hockey in the NHL and for the national team, right? It's just like, if we're looking at this, and if we're really breaking this down, it's like this would have been the perfect year to get your answer on if Gus can be just be part of the equation with Wallstedt moving forward. And it's just like, really? You're coming back 1 more year when we need to do this? Okay. The goalie's young enough that we can make it work. And now we have a carousel on our hands. But it could all change in like a month too, right?
It could,
like after this first season, and then like everything kind of just goes back to quote unquote normal, or something big happens and the kid plays himself into more of a regular role. But yeah, we'll see. We have so many questions right before puck drop regular season, and honestly, usually for the first few weeks, and then things start to get into a rhythm, and we see how the season usually plays out.
Yeah, and I think I talked really early on about trends each week. Like the goalies will definitely be one that I'll probably outline. I'll be goal save above expected, I think, is really the only stat you need for goaltenders, in my personal opinion. We'll save that full conversation for another day, but I'll be watching that closely in terms of who's performing, who's making the saves, and obviously we'll try to factor in opponent quality too, because being really good against Chicago is very different than being really good against Dallas and Nashville.
Right.
So
right. All right. Well, next week we will obviously talk about the first few games. What else are we going to dive into?
I don't know. I think I think this group might be ready to learn a little bit about expected goals.
Okay.
It's a little more complex, but I think if you understand, if you have a grasp on Corsi, and if you have a grasp on high danger chances, it's kind of the next level of that, which I think it's doable. And then we can start tying that into some other things like goal save above expected, which uses that for the goalie stats and things like that. So I think that's what we'll talk about next week. And like you said, we'll kind of break down what we're seeing from, I think, will they have 3 games played by then?
3.
Or is it 2? So only play obviously tomorrow, and then I think Saturday, Sunday, right? They have back-to-backs on the weekend, I believe.
I'm streaming the Sunday game and I'm streaming tomorrow's game.
But it'll be 4. So they have
all right, we'll
tomorrow.
have a lot to talk about.
They got tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, and then they play Tuesday. So and then have 3 days off.
So we'll have a lot to talk about in regards to what we've seen.
That's crazy. 0 games to talk about right now, and then in a week it's going to be 4.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and the dog days of summer are over. Preseason's over. The regular season is here. And reminder, if you missed the first 2 episodes of this show, it's on the Sota Pod podcast feed. You can also find it here on YouTube, episode 1 and episode 2 here. For anybody who is interested in learning more about analytics and missed any of our analytics segments, if you're just joining the show and this is the first episode you listened to and you made it this far, I will be posting them on the YouTube channel as well. That is the Sota Pod YouTube channel. So subscribe if you haven't already. We'll post as individual segments. So like Corsi Fenwick, if you missed that breakdown, we'll just post a simple video cut from our podcast, from our last live stream on that, as well as today's segment, as well as all the analytics segments. So if you guys miss it live or on the podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, you can find it easily on YouTube. And like I said, speaking of games, home opener, I will be live for that one. I'll be live for the Winnipeg game, St. Louis, and Florida, the first 4 that I will be streaming this month, and then to close out the month, Tampa and Pittsburgh. So I'll be streaming a lot this month, guys. So join us for those watch parties as well. As always, Brett, where can they find you on Twitter?
On Twitter at @B_Marsh92. If you so desire to follow me on Instagram and see pictures of my girlfriend and my nephew and adventures here and there, travel, feel free to follow me there. Don't use it super often, but that's where I am. And then starting tomorrow, player cards will start coming out. And then I am hoping starting Monday, we'll have analytics recaps, trends, different things like that. So that's I'll be on Medium, free to access. I may look at moving that over to Substack so it automatically drops into email inboxes. But, for now, we'll stick to Medium. So.
Links in the live chat. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening to the podcast, it's in the description, both on the YouTube description and wherever you listen to, wherever you get your podcast, it's also in the description there. Check out Brett's blog. We draw a lot of our conversation pieces from his blog directly, and that way you can follow along, especially going through some of the explanations of the analytics that we dive into, the tools. So hell yeah, man. Another week in the books, another great podcast. We got so much to talk about next week. It's going to be crazy.
It's going to be insane. I'm excited. I mean, obviously the Twins didn't give us much to look forward to in October this year. So we had Vikings are 5-0. So those vibes are great. And, now with hockey starting, it's a great time of year to be outside doing fall activities. So, this is one of my favorite times of the year. Like feels like Christmas, 2.5 months early. Should be some great games. Really, like we get 2 division rivals. We're just talking about how awesome those games should be. We have those. Is it two of the first 4? I think with Winnipeg and St. Louis. So should be awesome. And then obviously the home open. When your season openers at home, the energy in that building is going to be rocking. I think it's supposed to be phenomenal weather tomorrow too. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of patio beers consumed before the game and pregame parties, all that stuff. Atmosphere should be great. I'm really looking forward to it. I think I think nationally the Wild are being pretty underrated, and I'm excited for them to hopefully show up and prove a lot of people wrong.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll be back next week. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Like, subscribe, comment. If you are watching after, listening after, and want to if you want to comment on anything that we've talked about in the show, hit us up on YouTube, comment on the video, like the video, subscribe, and we'll be back next week after a bunch of games, ladies and gentlemen. Good night. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.
See ya.